When we talk about humanitarian work, it's not just about rushing to help people in distress. It's framed by core principles: humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. These aren't just lofty ideas, they're practical guidelines that shape responses on the ground.
Let me guess. There's a Geneva Convention thing buried somewhere in there, right?
Right, but they're also operational. Humanity addressing suffering wherever it exists is the bedrock. Like in Rwanda during the genocide, where the focus was solely on saving lives, no politics involved.
Hold up. Neutrality, impartiality, those make sense on paper. I mean, in conflicts, you can't pick sides. But on the ground? That's a tougher sell, especially somewhere like Gaza.
Exactly. Neutrality gets tested. In Gaza's hospitals, for example, medical teams face restricted access. A simple principle of impartiality, help those based on need, isn't always practical with active, targeted bombardments.
Yeah, and humanitarian groups, NGOs, the Red Cross, they stake their credibility and security on staying neutral. But let's face it, when conflict brews, they're still in the crosshairs.
Independence ensures that decisions are made without political or military influence. It allows operations to focus solely on survival and dignity. Any deviation risks eroding trust, the foundation of all humanitarian action. That's why it's so critical.
Trust, man, that's earned through consistency. Organizations like Médecins Sans Frontières, they build it by staying in war zones, patching up whoever walks through their doors, fighters or civilians.
Yes, that's a perfect example of operational neutrality. Their stance ensures everybody sees them as credible. But Duke, imagine having that burden in disaster zones, like in Somalia. Neutrality was the lifeline in those famine efforts.
Somalia? Oh yeah, I remember that. I was stationed nearby on one of those ops. It was chaos. Neutrality, hard as it is, was their armor. But when bullets fly, no principle stops stray rounds. That's just the truth of it.
Which is why ensuring impartiality despite risks becomes paramount. That's what strikes me about the challenges facing Gaza right now, or any conflict with allegations of war crimes, for that matter. Aid needs to happen without discrimination.
You mean without ticking off either side? Stick to the need, stay out of trouble. Got it. But that tightrope? It's razor thin sometimes. I don't envy the aid workers, that's for sure.
And that's why these principles, often overlooked or debated, anchor every response. Otherwise, Duke, there's no legitimacy, no credibility to ensure.
All right, so those principles hold everything together. I get that. But what about when everything's falling apart? Rapid displacement, whole towns moving overnight, supply chains crumbling. You've got any frontline examples for that?
Definitely, Gaza comes immediately to mind. The resource blockade, lack of food, water, electricity, it paralyzes movement and aid distribution. Evacuations are chaotic. Imagine coordinating care when hospitals are bombed and roads are impassable.
Tell me about it. Back in my day, convoy routes were gold, but even then, all it took was one blown bridge to bottleneck everything. And we're not even talking about the constant security threats.
Exactly. Aid workers become targets, especially in conflict zones. Hospitals, ambulances, they're supposed to be safe havens. But in places like the Balkans or Gaza, even those get hit. Everyone becomes vulnerable.
Yeah, doesn't matter if you're wearing a Red Cross patch or waving a white flag. Some see you as fair game. And when that happens, morale tanks. People stop volunteering, stop showing up.
That's where coordination between military and civilian actors could mitigate risks. Programs like those in Hawaii train teams together, real-time collaboration drills. It's about learning each other's protocols, expectations.
Right. Joint training is smart. But look, integrating military ops with civi aid groups in an active zone, that's tricky terrain. You've got mission conflicts, secrecy, hell, even trust issues.
True, but when done right, it saves lives. Seamless communication during drills can mean fewer casualties in real disasters. Cooperation is essential, even if tricky.
Still sounds like a minefield to me, metaphorically speaking. But yeah, I see the upside if you can cut through the red tape and egos. That's a big if, though.
And those logistical and collaboration issues are only part of the picture. It's clear that every response has to account for security threats, operational clarity, and human dignity, no matter the complexities. Building on those complexities, one area showing great promise is technology. Think about the Haiti earthquake in 2010. Satellite imagery became a game changer. It mapped destruction, pinpointing where aid teams needed to go. This kind of tech facilitated rapid coordination for food and medical supplies, addressing some of those logistical hurdles.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. It's a solid win for innovation, but it's not going to solve everything. All the mapping in the world doesn't much matter when roads and runways are blown to bits.
True, but it's a step forward, and in layered crises like Gaza, that innovation could be life-saving if restrictions on humanitarian aid didn't keep it locked up. Blockades stop not just essentials, but also tech-based solutions from getting in.
Right, and you're still in the middle of a firefight anyway. Let's be real. Nobody's firing up drone logistics when evacuation routes are under mortar fire. It's messed up, though, I'll give you that much. Blocking aid is brutal, plain and simple.
Exactly. And beyond aid, Gaza raises deeper questions, like adherence to international humanitarian law, allegations of indiscriminate attacks on civilians, hospitals destroyed. It challenges the very framework the ICC is supposed to protect.
Yeah, supposed to. That's the thing. ICC, war crimes tribunals, accountability, sounds nice, but the gears turn slow, if they even turn. By the time they act, the damage is done. Case in point, Gaza again.
It's painfully slow, yes, but accountability gives victims a voice, and though it's imperfect, tribunals have brought justice in the Balkans and Rwanda. For Gaza, the question is whether pressure on governments can ensure adherence to international law.
Maybe, but pressure's a long game. Meanwhile, people are dying now. I'm not saying courts are useless, but let's be honest. How do you enforce orders out there? Who's rolling up arrests in an active war zone?
It's a systemic issue, no doubt, but the ICC focuses on deterrence. If leaders know they might face trials, even years later, it might stop escalations. Rwanda showed both the power and limits of these mechanisms.
Deterrence works better as a theory, but when managing war zones, boots-on-the-ground action trumps it every time. You've got to show dominance over chaos, not just file paperwork for it.
But let's not discount hope. Humanitarian networks, rights groups, they're adapting, innovating, and still delivering aid under unimaginable odds. They offer survival and dignity in places where law fails. That's no small thing.
Agreed. Against all odds, they're still out there. It takes guts. Aid workers face risks that most wouldn't. If anything, that's the real front line, not negotiations or courtrooms.
Indeed. Whether it's technology, international law, or just basic aid delivery, every effort matters. Together, they form the patchwork that keeps hope alive in crises. Without them, where would the survivors be?
No argument here, Turo. And on that note, folks, stay informed and maybe find a way to support these groups. They need all the help they can get. And that's all for today.
Yes, it's been an enlightening discussion. Take care, everyone, and remember, compassion always has a role to play. Goodbye.